Hey, everybody. I'm Rick Coluccio, and you're listening to the Recruiting EQ podcast, a conversation show which advocates for emotional intelligence and using your EQ in recruiting and sales and hiring and all that good stuff, especially now in the age of ubiquitous AI tools and stuff. Today's episode is episode number 102, somehow already. And we called it EQ Hiring, the person, not the resume. I'm really thrilled to have our special guest today, Kati Peterman. Kati, how are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to today and being able to geek out with you on this. So I'm excited.
Likewise. We had our conversation sort of before this call. I want to say like 3 weeks ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was awesome. I feel like we're both equally passionate and nerdy about all this stuff. So it was like, oh yeah, this is going to be an easy one.
Yes, absolutely. It's always so much fun when there's alignment on this and you have a passion for emotional intelligence and just people in general. I really like people who like people.
Yes, for sure. So do I. And I feel like you'd think it would be more common in recruitment, but maybe it's not as common as you think.
Yeah, some people treat it like a job and it shows.
Yeah, for sure. Or like just treating people's careers like numbers on a page. I also understand that sometimes you just get caught up in it, right? And you lose a bit of the human focus. I don't begrudge anybody that, but it is nice to meet somebody who's still very, humanistic about it.
Absolutely. Same.
So, Kati, can you give our listeners just a quick highlight reel of who you are and a bit of what you're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I am the founder of FRX, which stands for Fractional Executive. It's a space that I'm extremely important about. I believe that every business owner, every CEO, every visionary, every dreamer should have access to top level executives and talents, and they should be able to do that on their terms. So, a lot of people have fears around those really large salaries, or they want the rock stars, they want the A players, they want the big guns, right? But they're like, I don't want to make that crazy commitment. I don't know if I'm there yet. They have fear and protection around their baby that they're building. And so I want them to take that chance, and I want them to have access to top level talent. And so that's why I created your FRX. And I love being in the space. I'm a number 2 by heart. I fell into being a number 1, a founder, but I'm really a number 2 girl. I'm operations all day through and through, whether it's personal life and professional. I truly enjoy supporting people, and I like keeping people safe, right? I like supporting their dream and bringing it to vision. And the best way to do that is through operations.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, I think that kind of thinking and lingo has become a lot more popular out there for people in business, that oftentimes to get a startup off the ground, you need the sort of visionary founder, and then a good number 2 person would be someone who comes in to lay out an operations strategy and sort of ground the visionary person and help them bring that vision to fruition. I feel like that was, mystical language that you learned when you were doing your MBA in the past, but now it's kind of like become part of the cultural lingo. Do you find that too? Do you find like it's easy for people to understand these things and they're on board with that kind of approach?
Yeah, I mean, Gino Wickman, hats off to him, right? Him and Vern really like paved the way. They're the godfathers, the grandfathers of operations. And Gino really painted a clear picture. He kind of coined visionary and integrator, number 1, number 2. Other people have done spin-offs and versions of that. They talk about being a number 2, but I think it's really important to be able to just identify with that, right? Like, which bucket am I in? Which lane do I fall in? It's not necessarily a one size fits all for everybody, but it's nice to have a direction to go. And Gino made it really easy for people to say, oh, that is me. I am an integrator. I am a number 2. I do lean towards more operations. That is how my brain works. And it's okay for my brain to think differently. And then for number 1s, they now have an opportunity to express, hey, here's why I have 5,000 new ideas a day. Here's why you might find me a bit chaotic, right? Here's where I am in dreamer mode, and I'm a visionary. I was just speaking with someone the other day, and they said, I really don't like the term visionary. Like, everyone thinks that they're changing the world, and they've overused it. And I kind of explained to him, and I referenced Gino's book for him, and he was like, oh, well, now when you think of it that way, he's like, I just thought they were all kind of like entitled and like, I'm a visionary. I'm I'm leading the world. And it's like, no, you're not with your HVAC company. But it's like, no, they're just identifying like, are they a number one or number two? And so yes, I think that's caught on. And I think it's really, really helpful. And everyone should do their best to identify. So that way when you're clear with other people, they now have an expectation of where to put you, right? Where how you would work with them, how they would operate. Like it says so much when you identify with a number one or a number two.
Yep, for sure. And I would imagine that in your unique case, where you are someone who is more of an operations person, more of a number two in the company person, rather than that visionary, I'm sure you probably have some traits of both, obviously, because
Yes.
you are a founder. So like you wouldn't
Yep.
have wanted to do that otherwise, chances are. Um, but identifying more with the number two in the company type, is that, I would imagine that's more helpful in consulting people, particularly who are more of the number one type, which is what you're doing.
It is, but like all founders, then I start falling in the trap of I'll just do it myself because I'm such a good operator, right? Why don't I just do it? And we've all been there. We all experience that. Like, well, I'll do it because I'll do it faster, or like I'll just get it done. So it puts me in that trap too. But um, I think that I've been able to go a lot further faster for that reason. And when I sit down and I have an honest heart to heart with myself and I'm like, hey, what's on your plate? What can you delegate? Like, you need to be in the number one seat right now. You committed to your team, you have a responsibility. So, who are you giving and who's your number two? Then I'm like, all right, time to hand it off. And I'm usually always grateful that I am. And I can still jump in there if I want to. But it's a good reminder to have those honest conversations with yourself and check in.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it must be good to have someone like yourself who's advising to keep people focused on those things, because like I have to imagine that I know a number of people who've started their own companies, some 20 years ago, some 3 years ago, and it sounds kind of like that number one visionary role of what that means in a startup has evolved immensely in the past 10 years, but even in the past 5 years post COVID. Like what a founder needs to do in terms of getting that vision out there. Are you seeing that as well, or is this just my perception of my two friends?
No, absolutely. It's something that we're seeing. I have a whole presentation that for certain groups and audiences, that I teach that. And it's called Stay in Your Lane. And it's just because you're an owner and a founder does not mean that you are a CEO, first of all. Like that whole title thing is not a good trend. And it's out there. And it's like we need to create some education about what a CEO truly is and their responsibilities, because just because you're an owner founder doesn't mean that you're a CEO. A CEO has execution responsibilities
Right.
that you need to, and not all dreamers are operational, right? We know that, and not all dreamers and visionaries and creators are executors. Like if you have the dream and the vision, and you're always thinking like 15 years down the road, that's fantastic. We absolutely need that skill. But if you can't execute on the vision, the dream, the path to week 3, week 6,
Yeah.
week 40, right? Then maybe you're not fit for the CEO role. And then not all CEOs can be operators, and not all operators can be CEOs. So I think it's really important for people to identify those and how it's shifting, because before, and growing up for us, entrepreneurs were kind of picked at, and they were kind of like, like, okay, like you're an entrepreneur. It was a big, scammy thing. There was a lot of hesitation. It was like, what are you trying to sell me? Or you're always launching some failed thing. Entrepreneurs used to really get a bad rap if you watch like the whole journey of it until you got really big, right? Like a huge
100%.
Fortune 500 company. Then it was respected back then. But now it's catching on. I'd say it's even like a little abused, where some people have LLCs, some people don't. But I mean, for the most part, anyone can get an LLC, right? So it's also a little abused in that space. And I think that we need to get away from the culture around entrepreneurs. Like if you're an entrepreneur, that means you wear all the hats, you're up
Yeah.
till 2 a.m., you're in startup mode forever. It's all or nothing. You had to hit rock bottom in order to, be something. And that's just not, that's not being an entrepreneur either. Like there's no prize in that.
Yeah, there's no prize in that is a good way of putting it, because I also think that there's two things that come to mind. One is that you definitely see that there is a like a borderline toxic or whatever, just full on toxic culture
Mhm.
around, like, which probably comes from the old stigma that I'm very old, right? I'm 45. So, growing
Right.
up, hitting my teens, hitting my teens in the after the dot com bubble burst,
Mhm.
you would see it in TV shows, movies, everywhere that it was a joke. I'm an
Yep.
entrepreneur, and they'd be like, right, so you're unemployed. Like that was
Yes.
the joke in the 90s.
Yes.
Entrepreneur equals you're unemployed, but you don't want to say it. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
feel like that trickle down effect now has caused a lot of people when they are entrepreneurs to publicly want to go so hard and be like, no days off. I work 80 hours a day and blah, 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 almost to prove that it's like, I'm not that. I'm not the guy who just says he's an entrepreneur. So consequently, if anybody takes a break, I'm going to whip them. You know what I mean? Like kind
Yeah.
of vibes. Do you feel like those two are related in a way that people are trying too hard to show that they're, or is it just like lack of knowledge of how to set things up for better culture?
I think we could look at the things that are not great, like ego or all of these things that tie into it. If we're just looking at the best case scenario, I think when you are, and I've worked with enough of them, right? When you're a visionary, a dreamer, and you see something that someone else doesn't, and you're trying to get people to buy in, it's very lonely. And I think that they really lack a lot of support. And so it's kind of like a child that's tired. They don't necessarily know that they need a nap. They're not sure how to communicate that, but they're like kicking and screaming. And now we're just past the point, and it's a full-on tantrum, right? Of like, let me show you how mad I am. And they don't know how to process that. But it's a very lonely journey for them
Mhm.
when they're like, no, like this is the product, this is the service, this is the mission, this is the dream, this is where the company is going to go.
Yeah.
And when they're constantly out there trying to get the right people to come on board and get support and get those things, I think the only way that a lot of people that are lacking support, I think the only way that they know how to do that is by trying to compete and one up and prove it. And then
Yeah.
when we get in that prove it model, like I was up till 2 a.m. and I was doing this, and to me, that makes me sad for that person because I know that they're tired. I know that they're missing out on life. I know that they're late for dinner and missing baseball games and doing all of those things. So it's like, hey, hold on a minute. Like, what do you need so you're not doing those things? Like, what it just means that they're lacking support. But yeah, I think it's like it's buzzy and it's catchy, and they see these examples, and so they think, oh, everyone must be doing that. And it's just like, does that person have the life that you want? Like, what are you even going for? Like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
why
What's the
are
goal?
you why are you doing all of that? Like, what's the point? Like, when is enough
Yeah.
enough? And I just truly believe, like, bringing it back full circle, if you were given by universe or source, whatever is your thing, right? However you downloaded that dream and that vision, wherever that came from does not want you to be suffering. Like, and it is suffering that you're self-inflicting when you're just working 60, 70 hours, like, oh, I didn't eat today, I forgot to eat. Like, I hear that all the time
Yeah.
from employees, like, oh, I didn't even eat today. And it's like, go eat.
That's
What are
an
you
easy
doing?
an easy problem to solve, really. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
It should be an easy problem to solve. No, it's true. I feel like there's also just a toxicity in work culture that seems to have emerged out of COVID, period. Like out of COVID, it feels like scope has creeped into people's lives, whether they're working remotely or not. It feels like
Mhm.
everybody's being asked to work longer hours for less pay, to do more things, to just keep whatever system we had alive to an extent. And I feel like funnily enough, a lot of the people I've spoken to obviously I speak to business owners for a living, right? So I speak to a lot of business owners in the past 13, 14 years that I've been in recruitment, but especially now, suddenly people who are in that not infancy phase of an entrepreneurship, but something it's got legs. There's a few clients and they're earning money. They seem
Mhm.
to be the happiest people now, funnily enough, compared to people who are employees, which before was considered to be the less stressful, easier option, safe, stable. Meanwhile, people who are employees in larger companies are getting laid off by surprise at all levels, right up into
Mhm.
like presidents of companies in a surprising way. And it feels like all of them are stressed and working hard. Like it feels like this balance of shifting positive culture toward entrepreneurships has begun to happen for sort of the first time in my lifetime anyway. Are you seeing some of that as well, or is this just my recruiter brain spazzing out?
I think that it's definitely being more welcomed and discussed and talked about, and there's more education behind it. So people are seeing like, okay, this is possible. I can do this. I can resonate with that. This is a need. Um, I think that I know the job market has been, tough for people in general, and there are a lot of changes going on. But I personally think it's a really good change. I think that this is a time with all of the tools and resources and things that we have available to us, right? And with the things out there, I think if you're really clear on what you can utilize, what tools and resources you utilize on a daily basis, what you can do, what you can perform, and what you enjoy doing, it's going to reflect. And I think that just having something to have something, having a paycheck to have a paycheck, right? Signing on for benefits, just doing the same old, right? Just working in a factory because your family worked in a factory, or just being a nurse because your Filipino mom said you need to be a nurse. That doesn't cut it anymore. If you uniquely do not have skills and a desire and a passion for something, and you're not standing out and you're not utilizing tools and resources in a space that you actually care about, it's going to show. And nobody wants someone that's mediocre and just kind of half-assing it, excuse me, and showing up, just to show up. And I think that showing up just to show up is becoming more apparent, and there's a more awareness around it. And I think people really want people, and so I see it kind of like a more as a cultural shift,
Mhm.
which I think is very helpful. I think like that old just get in line, clock in, clock out, do your thing, have a whole separate life. I think that's going away. And so I think culturally, companies and things are aligning, positions are aligning culturally on, core values. Are you truly bought in? Like, do you really have the tools, resources, and skill set that's going to take us from here to here? And I think that cultural shift is happening.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think there's still a fair amount of cynicism from people who are in positions that are blue collar, that are nursing or what have you,
Yeah.
because the monetary compensation per buy-in hasn't caught up yet. I think it will as people get robotics and AI and whatever in place to make companies more efficient. I think that there's a possibility for the compensation to match the buy-in, like for there to be a reason to buy in that much.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's cynicism around a lot of people who've never had a happy work environment. There's a lot of people who don't think it's possible. They're like, "What? This is a scam. You just want me to work more and be miserable more hours out of the day." And that's one of my big takeaways from doing recruitment. I'm like, no, you know what? There's actually a lot of people who are happy in what they're doing. It's possible to be
Yeah.
happy in what you're doing.
Yes, no, it absolutely is possible. And, um, I think people just need to take their time, like finding these opportunities. And most of the time, we're not designing that, or people are not designing that. They haven't even really thought about it because they're just in their day to day.
Yeah.
And then something happens with the company, right? They start getting paranoid. Now they're in a negative mindset. They don't know if they're going to keep their job. They don't know if there's going to be a layoff or, a size down. And then the time comes, their position is rolled up, and then they're looking for something desperately and in a panic. And of course, like with recruiters, they're like, I need to find something now, and I need this, and I need that. They don't even think about what environment would I enjoy? What skills, from the past 10 years at this company that I've been doing X, Y, and Z, if I could cut out Z and X and just do Y, I would actually be so happy. How do I go find that? And that's where I think people like you who care about the person, we always talk about getting the whole person to show up to work. I don't believe you should have a completely separate life. Like, granted, I'm a very private person, but I am who I am professionally and personally. It's the
Yes.
same person, right? Just different levels of depth, but it's the same person. You should show up to an environment that you can be yourself and your brain lights up and you get excited and you find momentum in things. And someone like you cares about that.
Yep.
But sometimes people are just placing to place and it's a turnover. Sometimes people won't allow you who do care about them to find a happy home. They won't necessarily allow you to go through that process because they're so desperate, right? They did it at the wrong time. Preparation is key. You should be consistently utilizing tools like LinkedIn and building momentum. You should be redefining your skill in your craft. The people who have been in something and they always say, well, I'm not getting paid what I used to, and I'm a senior level executive and I've been here for 20 years. Yes, absolutely. The experience, the knowledge, just what you've went through in life is absolutely valuable. But are you behind on the tools that the 20-year-old who's earning $17, sometimes $20 an hour less than you, they're utilizing tools and moving faster than you? Like, how does that bridge out? Like, I think there's a happy medium where, like, yes, 20, 30 years of experience is fantastic. I love to see that. I love to see consistency,
For sure.
but I also want to see freshness and newness. And I want to see new skill sets and tools and resources. And I want to see a fresh perspective. And I want someone to see blind spots, not just this is how we've done it and we're always going to do it this way, which is what you get with some of those, people who have been in the industry for 20, 30 years.
It's totally true. And I also feel though, and I'd love your take on this, because I feel like there's the cynical person who's not being themselves at the job and sees it as this labor, this toil, this torture almost. They have to go to work for, you know what I mean? And they put memes like just 60 years to go. And then, you know what I mean? Like that kind of person
Yeah.
who just thinks that that's what a job is. So they go through all of this so that they can then get promoted to be a manager. So they're like, aha, finally, I can be the one inflicting the torture instead of being the one getting the torture. I've earned this, I've earned it. I've
Yeah.
done my time, like it's jail or whatever. And now I get to be a manager. And then managing is obviously super exhausting and there's a lot of problems and whatever else. And then they're like, oh, I did my time as a manager. Now I get to be a director. And then now I get to be a VP or whatever else. And I often find those are the people who are the most like, no, I did my time. I did my 20 years. I don't have to do all kinds of this stuff anymore. And often there's like a layer of removal from the work, from the core frontline work, and a layer of removal from the rest of the staff too, that they see as a reward for going through this. So I feel like that whole trajectory starts with this fallacy that it's like I'm not going to be happy at work. It's okay to show up someplace I don't like and I'm not myself every single day. And it goes all the way through their whole lives to are you feeling that there's a difference between that trajectory and someone who has moved up because they're just being themselves and happy where they are?
Yeah, I think that is where they have to step into, and I do see this, right? We go into teams and companies and when we're KPIs are never fun. People start to feel a little micromanaged. They get a little on edge. They're not fully bought into the process. They're like, "Well, I've been doing it this way and like it works, so why are you questioning me?" I think for just a second when we have people like that, you have to step into the owner's shoes for just a minute. If you personally were dishing out payroll, right?
Mhm.
You were signing a check. It's coming out of your pocket every week, every month, biweekly, whatever that is, right? And think about benefits, think about cost. But you personally, like you're just stroking that check, whether sales come in or whether they don't, or whether it's a good month or a bad month, whether something like COVID happens or whether there's a national emergency, like you're fronting out payroll. Would you want to pay for someone and write a check that is disgruntled and bare minimum and comes in with a crappy attitude to your vision, to your mission, to your baby, to your company that you're getting out there? Like, would you hire you? Would you go into that? Probably not.
Yeah.
you know and so I think that it's when you shift that perspective, that sometimes helps a little bit. And then also asking them like, well, what is the point? Like, if you're not happy and that is your viewpoint, is it because you think, I would go into their limiting beliefs, like,
Yeah.
is it because you think you don't deserve an opportunity to be happy? Is it because you think what you're gifted in doesn't exist? Do you not feel comfortable asking for an opportunity to work on XYZ and project that you're really excited about? Like, what is it? I would just try and have an understanding. Um, this is why I'm such a fan of like performance reviews and quarterly reviews, because we don't spend enough time. We just, pile on, pile on, pile on. And that can happen. And it's just more and more work and more expectations. But I think it's really important to check in with the human, to make sure that they're enjoying their experience. They have all the tools and resources that they need to do the job, that they signed on to. And I think that starts really, really, really early. Like even before the interview process, it starts in the job description.
Right. So the job description, I think, is a good segue into at FRX.
Mhm.
What are the kinds of roles you like to pick up and fill? Like, where does the fractional piece come in the title of FRX? And what are the roles that you do or don't work on?
Yeah, so we really work with all industries, all business owners. Some people will say like, "Yeah, but you don't understand, the dental field, or you don't understand plumbing, or you don't understand med spas." We don't need to. You're the expert. You're supposed to be the expert in that field, right? What we do is we look at all 5 phases of business, right? So startup, perseverance, viability, scaling, and succession. And if you aren't interested in scaling and you have something that's just really viable and you want to stay there and you're happy and it's consistent, great, stay in viability. You don't have to go to some crazy scale and you don't have to have this massive exit, right? But we look at the 5 phases of business of where someone is. Then we look at the 5 pillars. So we lump marketing and sales together, leadership, personnel, finance, and operations, right? We kind of like assess all 5 of those pillars. And then our deliverables, so that way someone is clear on what we're doing, is we're going to run the analysis, right? The SIPOC exercise. We're going to determine their KPIs. We're going to organize their company org chart, and then we're going to help their communications and their meeting structures. So if we see a clear, they're in startup and they want to get to perseverance, or they're in viability and they want to be able to scale. If we see a clear path on the phases of business, that's a yes. There's always a million opportunities in the 5 phases of business. We could stay with someone forever because of
Yeah.
that. And if they're willing and open to those core 4 deliverables, and it's a fit, then that's someone that we work with. But really, when we're looking at the phases and we're looking at the pillars, that's when we'll determine like what it needs to be. Just because someone says, "Oh, I finally need a number 2," doesn't necessarily need, you don't need a full-time CEO, you don't need a full-time COO. Maybe you need a VP of sales, right? Because
Right.
revenue is the most important for your company at that time. Maybe you just need someone to provide strategy inside of marketing to get you kind of cleaned up and get a clear path on branding, differentiators, ICPs, those types of things. So really, we'll come in, we assess all 5 phases, all 5 pillars. We do a very wide strategy of the entire company. We look at the entire org chart, and then we decide which roles are most important. And sometimes we'll sit in 2 or 3 seats, like most COOs do, right? A true COO should be able to come into a company, a true executive. You should be able to come in and sit in any open seat. Whether that's customer service reps on the phone and you have to figure out what is broken with customer service,
Right.
right? We are not always leaders. Sometimes we're followers, sometimes we're managers. You have to understand and you got to fall in line of what is best for the company at that time and what seat you need to sit in. So it really changes. It's very specific to the company. I love that we're able to customize things and still do things at a very high level, because it's all about what the company needs, not just what we offer.
Yep, understood. No, I think that must give you this almost industry agnostic kind of superpower to very quickly look at a company and get all the information and even be like, I don't think you're giving me all the information. Or
Yes.
do you know what I mean? Like, or
Yes.
like, I hear you, but what's missing is actually that you're saying this, but I think it's actually, you know what I mean? Like to really get through what someone thinks is going on when they have blinders on versus what you can see is truly going on.
Yeah, it's just data, right? Like data driven conversations. People can easily get emotional and protective or have fear, and that will show up in conversations. And that's when things, especially working with third party vendors, right? That's when things can really go sideways. And people say, like, oh, we paid a bunch of money, but we didn't get X, Y, and Z because people had different expectations. We just have to look at data, and then we keep our commitments data driven as well. So we say, hey, in 30 days, here's the results we want to have. We want to increase or decrease, this by this, X to Z, A to C, whatever that looks like. And we just use all of the data to make those decisions, to make suggestions. And of course, things still come up because people have fear. People naturally don't like change, right? That's going to come up. And you just have to meet someone where they are and let them make that decision. But definitely keeping it data driven makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Now, are you guys taking on the tasks of a fractional COO only, or if you determine that they need a CRO, are you going out and finding them that CRO, or like where does the line get drawn when you're in your execution of this?
Yeah. So we will, and we're able to do majority of functions because again, as a true executive, you should be able to get in there and do it. So if it's, automations, if it's workflows, if it's SOPs, pipelines, automations, things like that, where we are able to do that. We do have a really amazing CTO. We have two amazing CTOs on our team. So they're 100% just chief technical officers. They stay in their lane. That's what they do because that's very specific. And then everyone on the team is a little bit unique and they have different skill sets that they really enjoy doing. I have an amazing COO who she did e-commerce and marketing for a long time. So she's fantastic. And if someone is needing a CMO during the discovery phase when we're going through that audit, we'll place them with her because she's more of a marketing background, right? We have someone that they've been in construction for a long time. So if I have a good old boys, boots on the ground, Georgia-based company, I'm probably going to put them with Jim because of his experience and his background. So we're able to do most things. One thing that I don't touch on and that we don't do is we're able to provide strategy and say, okay, in finances, it's now time for you to hire a CFO,
Right.
or hey, it's now time for you to hire a fractional CFO. We'll say you don't need a CFO, you need a bookkeeper, and you need to get organized, or hey, you need a data analyst, and this is what we would recommend. So we'll make recommendations for positions that we don't necessarily fill, and then we can either help introduce you to a trusted third party, right? We have a few vetted sources. We have a very tight network. We have a few trusted sources that we use, or we will do kind of the placement for that position as well. We use a tool. I don't know if you've geeked out on this, but predictive index. We
Mhm.
believe in drives and needs versus a personality test, because a personality, if someone is with you from 25 to 35, based on their life experiences, responsibilities, and financial responsibilities, their personality can drastically change, right? Their
Yeah.
living environment, did their family expand? Did they now have children? Where someone's drives and needs don't necessarily change over time. They might go from here to here, but they're not going to go from here to here.
Right. That makes total sense. And yeah, so I actually think that the format that you guys use for your value proposition is, to me, something that is probably going to get more popular in recruitment. I think a lot of people in recruitment who are worried about like AI replacing recruiters or whatever else, to me it signals that they have a lot of recruiters who are behaving like automatons and not people, who are
Mhm.
just sort of like cranking out a lot of calls and just talking to a lot of people to see, are they interested, are they available, do they loosely have the experience, and then ushering them over, which I
Yeah.
understand has for a long time has been a thing.
Yeah.
There is a lot of automation that can be done in that process. I don't think you'll ever totally get humans out of it, but you could thin down the number of humans doing that kind of work. But I actually think what you're discussing is having people who are not your staff or people who are not recruiters. They are able to do the fractional work. So it's like having a bench, like they would say in IT, right? That you're
Mhm.
essentially just having them do you're placing the person who
Yeah.
is, but they work for you. It's kind of like one step has been removed from from the recruitment process, where it's not like you need to pay an employee and that employee needs to go find a candidate that's going to do the job. Your employee is the person who is going to do the job fractionally for a few different clients. I feel like that this kind of like expertise or like subject matter expert bench is gonna get more popular, but I don't know that it's that popular now. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, are you? How do you feel about your value prop in the market right now?
You know, there's two sides to that. So it is popular where A players and high level, executives, they want freedom and flexibility, and they just want to do the things that they want to do and when they want to do them and how they want to do them. Like real A players and some of the best executives, they want the freedom. So they're coming to me and my inbox is always flooded with, I'm looking for a new opportunity. I'm really passionate about this and I just want to do it all day. And, they're really hot on that right now. That that is very desirable for a lot of, A players. Of course, we get some people who just want to like cut corners and they do it for stacking money. They think, oh, I'll get 10 clients and I'll make XYZ. That's not always how it works. You still have to deliver to all 10 clients. But then I'd say like industry, it comes and goes. There's this like wave where the fractional term is it's kind of like AI, where it's gotten a little beat down. And so
Sure.
now we're starting to see people who are like, no, I don't want AI. They think, oh, I don't want fractional. They're still going to charge me premium price and I'm going to get 1 hour a month out of someone. There's people that have just definitely abused the fractional term the way
Yeah.
that others have abused AI. And so now it's kind of like that off-putting, like, feeling. But once people see what it truly is and that they have access to the A level, like you said, a full bench that you can pick and play and put in place and pause and go when you want, you just have a bench of like really top performing professionals. Then people are like, oh, this is great. I'm able to get an executive that would be two, three, $400,000 a year for the price of customer service position. And so then
Yeah.
they're like, I'm all in. That alone, the price swap for them, they're like, oh, I get it. And this person doesn't need 40 hours, right? Because of their experience and their skill set, this executive doesn't need 40 hours to go accomplish X, Y, and Z, which someone in a very green and new position who's not familiar with the industry or doesn't understand the process or experience, it would take them 40 hours. So there's just a huge time saving, resources saving, and it is a great model. Sometimes it takes people a little bit to see that, but that's just something we're willing to fight through and work with.
I do hear you though, because as a rec to rec during COVID, we actually launched a fractional practice for rec to rec. It didn't really catch on because the market changed so drastically after COVID, and so that was people just didn't have money for anything for a little while in 2023, and we're only really recovering now, I would say. But for a while, the idea was it was like, oh, a fractional recruiter, yeah, but like I'm gonna only want to pay that person like $20 an hour, and I guess they're not gonna. It's gonna take them a while to ramp up, and I'm like, no, I'm saying
Fractional
you pay.
doesn't mean you can be cheap.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, I'm saying you pay someone $200 an hour, they do 10 hours a week, and they fill all your jobs because they're the terminator. That's what I'm proposing to
Exactly.
you, right? It's like
Exactly.
that's the pitch that people don't seem to catch. I know what you mean though. They think fractional equals cheap. They think, oh, these are going to be B and C players who can't get a real job. It's like it's actually kind of the opposite. There's a bunch of the A plus players who, for them, they could do it like you're saying, whatever the heck they want in life, and then just work 10 hours here, 10 hours there at a high premium, do the tasks really efficiently. Like, but I don't think people believe that's true sometimes too. It
Yeah.
is true. I know it's true. I've done, like I say, I've sold it, I've done it, and people have been like,
Yep.
"Whoa, this person
Yes.
filled all our jobs in 2 weeks," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's why you're paying them $200 an hour. Like, it's the
Yeah.
difference." You know what I mean?
We just have to meet people, where out at. Like, did they get burned, right? Like,
Yeah,
I know
probably.
how hard it is in the marketing space, and business owners have been promised the moon from every ad buyer, and you just got to do a 15,000 retainer and then do this and then do that and do. I always think the craziest thing for me is like with ad spend, right? And I'll never understand this, so maybe you can help me change my mindset. Is with ad agencies and stuff, they're like, well, we get a percentage of your ad spend. And it's like, well, I don't want to spend more. I actually want to spend as little as possible and get the results, like you should get my ROAS is down to, what we need it to be. So this
Yeah.
absolutely contradicts like the whole game plan. Like subconsciously, that's just so off. Um, and so when we have those people who are like, oh, and they're kind of fighting the fractional, or I just say like, hey, where have you been burned that you
Yeah.
felt like your investment wasn't respected?
It's a good point,
Just
right?
having understanding, right? Because then I can talk about that. And either I'm going to give you what you need and understand, and maybe there's some type of agreement or something that needs to be in place. But if we can reach an understanding of what someone has invested in, what they've been through, and promises that were made, maybe deliverables that weren't, I'm willing to work through that with a client because I truly do care about the resources and people that they have available to them. But I'm also completely okay if someone is just being cheap. I'm like, well, it sounds like you need to hire a VA. And I think that that would be a much better fit. It's going to be a longer journey for you, but it sounds like a VA is in your price point.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing is I think some people are just looking for a quick way to cut corners, but to your point, I mean that's on a long enough timeline, I think people always regret it when they're trying to cut corners instead of just manage tasks efficiently,
Yeah.
right?
And it's like, we'll be here when you're done. We'll be
Yeah.
here when you're ready.
At the end
No
of the
big
day,
deal.
there's no substitute for someone doing the real work, right? It has
No.
someone that you can't just sort of cheap out and try to cut corners. It always bites you.
Yes, it always comes back. Yeah, it does.
And now with how things move so quickly, it comes back to bite you faster and quicker
Yes.
and more times than ever.
Yeah. Your AI will let you know how much you failed. That's
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, yeah. As long as you're not using ChatGPT and like, this is a brilliant idea. You're a genius. Everything you
Oh,
say
I
is
know.
amazing.
I love those where it's like, I just told chat that I murdered someone in the backyard, and they're like, well, you were under a lot of stress. I can completely see why.
Exactly. I want
Like,
to start a chain
no.
of poop flavored ice cream places. What a
Yeah.
creative idea. No one's thought of that before.
Yeah.
You're going to be a billionaire. Okay, so then you told me an anecdote that prompted me to want to put this title on the episode, which is, and what I love about what the anecdote was, the spirit of it here was that really focusing on the person, not the resume, meaning sometimes
Mhm.
people aren't willing to talk to the right person because they're not seeing what they picture on the resume. Can you maybe give that anecdote to everybody right now so we can unpack that?
Yeah, you can have a workflow. You can put AI together that saves you time, that looks for the majority of credentials. Like even LinkedIn will say like 4 out of 5 of your needs met, or 3 out of 2 of, whatever. You can do all that, and you can absolutely build workflows and to save you time and pre-interview questions and a pre-scripted, like, here's our company culture, here's a review of the position. Like totally, systems are great for that, right? AI is helpful. The human part of it that I think, and even when there is a human doing this, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, is um people just don't know how to ask questions or connect with people. And so this is why they're in those jobs that they don't like. This is why they signed on to a job description that they thought it was going to be one thing and then it ended up being another because they were promised something in an interview that never happened. And now it's been 8 months and they wish they would have taken the other job. You need to talk to a human, and you need to be a human, and you need to
Mhm.
show up as a human, and you need to have connection in this, because I see people who get so stuck on things and they don't have connection during the process. And so they write people off. I talk to these amazing people, and I'm sure you do too, of people that are like, no, I've submitted 40 resumes and I've done this and I've done that. And I'm like, wow. Um, Okay, one of my favorite questions is, if you could wave a magic wand and you had your perfect schedule, whether you're a morning person or a night owl, and maybe that's Tuesday through Saturday, or maybe that's Sunday through Wednesday. Maybe you work from 7 a.m. until 2, or maybe you work 10 a.m. to 4. What's your perfect schedule? And I learned so much about someone because this tells me if they're a night owl or a morning person. It tells me if they have kids and they want to prioritize pick up and drop off and family time. It lets me know if they're an avid traveler or what they're passionate about. Like, people just share when you ask a question like that, because I'm trying to get to know you and what you want. And if you could wave a magic wand, What are you looking for? What does that line up? It also will let you know if someone is a massive night owl. They say that they have 4 side hustles. You probably shouldn't have them on your customer phones team from 7 a.m., in the morning, because they're going to be late. They're going to be tired. They're not a morning person.
Yeah,
They're
and they're gonna
working
be
through.
miserable.
Yeah,
They'll be
exactly.
miserable too.
Exactly. I have found some of the absolute best people that, they were given opportunities and starting points, and they were able to learn from managers, and just their background. You would think like, wow, like people are really hung up on degrees, and they're like, I see so many things. And I'm a poacher. I love poaching. I love poaching. Because A players are never really looking for jobs, right?
No, that's the thing. It's all
Yeah,
poaching. It has to be
yeah.
poaching now, I feel.
So it's poaching is so fun. Sometimes I'll do that on the weekends. But um I'll see these requirements for people, and it'll say like doctorate required, or bachelor's required, or 6 years minimum experience of X, Y, and Z. And I always think to myself, when they're so heavy on the degree forward part, like, what is it that you're looking for or hoping that this person never misses that you think the degree will solve,
Yeah,
right? But then you have to ask yourself, like, this person might have a degree, but it might be 15 years outdated. Like,
totally.
industries change so much. Like, look at how much we've grown in the past 2 years. That doesn't necessarily mean that someone's degree from 30 years ago is sufficient for today.
Yeah, or are they a person who cheated on all their exams? We don't know that. We don't know, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know them that well. If they
Yeah.
cheated on all their exams, they're probably a pretty good liar in the interviews too. So, like,
Yeah,
there's a lot of
yeah,
things that can go wrong with that.
so many things. And people don't do verifications on degrees. How many times, has someone said like, okay, there you need your bachelor's, and like not once did they ever ask for your degree before they moved forward.
That's it. Major companies, right? Enterprise companies will have a third party company that verifies all these things, but most mid-sized companies and below don't. They just take it at your word, whatever's on LinkedIn.
Yeah, they're not verifying it.
Yeah. So you told me an anecdote specifically of a placement that you made for someone in a COO role. And what I loved about it was that you had said that you told the client something along the lines of just trust me and meet her before they knew what she was up to. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. So when we're working with companies and I need someone to be a little bit more open minded because they have had such a difficult time filling a position, again, with the degrees, with the pay range, with whatever it may be, just a difficult time. And I'm trying to get them to think outside the box because I truly believe that I will know what will work and I want them to have success. I always use her as an example. I was the COO of a company, and I came in. They personally were just doing in-person events and education, and this was 2021. And they said, "Hey, Katie, we need you to help us take 100% virtual." And I said, "Okay, got it." And I got to know the staff, and I got to know what was going on. And there was a gal there, and she was kind of wearing all the hats already. She was kind of doing everything. She was organizing and coordinating all of it. She was basically doing payroll better than the guy's CFO. She knew everything that was going on. She knew all of the investors. She knew all of the clients. She had a fantastic memory. But she wasn't necessarily happy. And I was just like, man, like, what is going on? And even her and I at the very beginning, like, we didn't necessarily instantly connect, right? And I had to have a chat, and we just had a very open conversation. And I acknowledged with her, I said, "Hey, we have a lot of overlapping responsibilities that he has given me as the COO, and why weren't you given the COO position?" And she's like, "Yeah, I asked myself the same thing. I'm doing all of it. I'm wearing all of the hats. Like, why was I not?" And she was kind of like a admin operations assistant, but the assistant word was in there, and she was very much treated like an assistant. And when I asked the owner about it, he's like, "Well, like her background, like I don't know, she's this, that, and the other, and she was a bartender." And I'm like, "Okay, and." And he used that almost as like a drag down, discrediting, like I can get away with paying someone very little, asking them to do the most, giving them a not so great title because of their background. But everything that she was doing, I was very impressed with, and I was
Yeah.
like, wow, this is fantastic. I actually poached her. I am a fan of poaching. She went with me to two other companies. She stayed on as the COO of one company, a family that I helped transition after the founder passed away. Um, and I told them, I was like, you'd be lucky to have her. She's the best COO that I've ever had. I now have her full time on our team, and she's someone that I can put inside of any company, and I know that she will deliver at the highest level. And she has the most amazing skill set, and she has been such a trusted source. It doesn't matter how difficult the client is. It doesn't matter if they're the meme monster. It doesn't matter what industry. Like, she just does it and she shows up and she's great and people love her. They might not love her immediately, but they love her later. And to look at someone's background and to be like, oh, like they were a bartender, or oh, this or that, or to belittle or discredit someone versus like looking at the work and the functions that they're doing and how they do it and their deliverables. When you have someone like that on your team that you know that they're never going to miss a beat and you don't even have to ask them what they're doing, like that is invaluable. That is peace of mind. That is the best hire you're ever going to make.
Yeah, and it's very rare. But I think part of the reason it's rare is I think that we've kind of collectively lost this definition of a company as a group of people who work together on something. I feel like it's all become fragmented into like these weird fantasies that probably because of social media. I mean, if you think about it, we're just used to a world where your Instagram is who you are, and so it's like if you're not projecting an image of eating the best food and showing yourself at the gym at 4 a.m. and you know what I mean, going on rich vacations, then you're a loser or whatever. I feel
Yeah.
like that's gone. That's infected our culture so completely that it's like, well, we want all of our people to have gone to Harvard or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's just like
Yeah.
an idea to project an image of what the company is, rather than realizing, do you know what? These are human beings who have to show up and spend a lot of time together. If you have someone who is interested in the job, who wants to do well, who has resilience, creativity, can learn like good learning skills, listening skills, and who is very reliable, kind of who cares what they did before? Obviously, you can't be a brain surgeon on that alone. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
limits,
Yeah.
but in a corporate job or in a sales job or whatever else, I feel like this whole business of trying to hedge your bets based on somebody's background or their education or whatever. I hope that now in the age of AI, this is going to go out of fashion a little bit.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that a little? That people are looking more for human traits as being the must-haves over their experience, or do you feel you still need to push people in that direction really currently?
I do feel like it's a little bit of a push. Like we talked about earlier, I think there's that like cultural shift where people are wanting to know like, okay, I have diehard fans on the team. I have people that have the same core values and we're aligned. I think that is trending and up and coming. But I'm just really seeing, I don't want to call it fear. I'm not sure what it is. Everyone's being like oddly conservative right now, and they think that I'm going to cut all these costs and I'm going to downsize it. I'm going to do this, and this is why I'm using AI. Um, I don't know. I think people like are just in this weird. I get it. They're trying to. They call it their version of efficiency, which is just cutting down expenses. Like that's not efficiency, by the way.
Yeah.
Just cutting down expenses. And I think that there's going to be some backlash on going heavy into the AI of replacing people, and it does need to go more the human route. I'm thankful that people are coming back and saying like, hey, we put this into chat gpt and it gave us this and this, and this ran us into the ground. I don't like to hear that, but I'm also like, yeah, chat gpt is not going to analyze your company and give you the right KPIs. Like, what data is it basing it off of? Like, yes, it's basing things off of data, which is why people trust it, but it's not your data. It's not all of your industry specific data. And there's only so much data it has access to that it's not even accurate. So I'm glad that people are coming back around and they're like, oh, I actually missed this part. Or all the people that replaced their customer service teams with AI. Well, now that you have 41 negative reviews and people are pissed off and your client retention has gone down by 12%, I'm happy to know that you'll be placing humans on the phone.
Yeah.
If you didn't like talking to someone in India, what makes you think I want to talk to a robot?
No, that's the thing though too, is that all of the sort of weird efficiency attempts, I think 2020s are going to be looked back on as like an efficiency, like being a super popular misnomer in corporate culture. And and you see this certainly with there's been a lot of recruiting agencies that have gotten bought up by private equity since COVID. And the very big difference that you see in a recruiting agency when a private equity firm buys it, not all the time, but 8 times out of 10, is it is just it is just like, well, we have 2 quarters leeway. So in 2 quarters, if we don't stop losing money, everybody over 100K is getting let go, over 100K salary, because they're not effective anyway. So let's just get rid of them and hire cheaper people, because the idea is that the job of recruitment is this automaton-ish thing. There's no value add, right? And they
Yeah.
might be right. Maybe in that industry there is no value add. Maybe they're just being automatons. Maybe they're right. So maybe I'm wrong. But I have to imagine that there's this tipping point where what people are calling efficiency stops being effective at some point, and then we're going to look back and go like, okay, maybe our goal should be effectiveness and not just efficiency alone in a vacuum.
Yeah. I think it's a buzzword. It's one of those things that it's like, well, what does efficiency mean to you?
Right.
What does being efficient? Because you can actually keep the human on board. You can empower them to use the AI tools, right? And now that person that was hired at, a $35 an hour output, because they're using the AI tools, they're now able to produce at a task. You're still keeping them at 35 an hour, but they're now producing at the $75 an hour mark. So I think that there's this like beautiful merging of the tool, where it's like, as long as you have the right person that's willing and able to utilize those tools and resources, like how much further could you go having both versus cutting all of the people? And I think that's when you say like some of these high level people are going to get cut. I think the people who are not open minded at all to tools and resources and AI, um, even if it's a small level, I think that you will get left behind. And I think that, everyone has to continue sharpening the axe, right? And AI is part of your axe now. And
Yeah.
there has to be you need to have some education on it. You need to have awareness. You need to have some general knowledge. You need to stay up to date on things. And so I think for the people that are getting cut, and that they're concerned about it, I think you have to ask yourself, have I sharpened my axe? Have I updated my skill set? Am I utilizing all the tools and resources that are best available to me? Have I asked for new tools and resources? Have I brought that to the team? Are you contributing, or are you just like kind of coasting? Because nobody, and again, imagine if you were the owner, nobody wants to pay payroll for a coaster.
Yeah, especially now in such a complicated market, right? It's there's no place to quote unquote hide anymore or avoid bringing value to the table on a regular basis. It's not like, oh, I earned my stripes, so now I get to retire at this company. That's not a thing that's existed probably for a little while. Um, just the reality of it. What do you think, in your estimation, are the human traits that AI probably cannot do or will not do that you would like to see people look at more, hiring managers?
Um, I'm trying to think of another word. Am I allowed to swear?
Hell yeah. I mean,
Okay.
fuck yeah. Sorry.
So it's not that bad. It's just like calling bullshit.
Yeah.
With AI, again, on LinkedIn, you can put whatever you want. You can get people to write reviews. You can put whatever you want on your resume. Um, and you can answer questions, kind of like cheating on a test. And I think with AI, it's actually pretty easy to cheat those things unless you have a very dialed in skill set, like watching a graphic designer or a coder in live time. A lot of people can bullshit their way through with AI, and they can fudge things, and they can say, oh, I completed XYZ, or oh, this was my percentage, or I increased sales from whatever to whatever. I'm a compliance girl. I freaking love compliance because I hate liars, right? And when
Right.
someone says, like, oh, I've had, 140 exits, and then it goes to 120 exits, and then it goes down to 90 exits, and then it goes down to 75 exits. It's like, hey, what's going on, right? You can't, well, some people are able to do that and they're able to bullshit their way through with humans. But I think the human part is where you can call bullshit, right? And you can see, like, is someone just nervous or are they completely fibbing, right? Top grading, I'm a huge fan of top grading. It's a crazy manual to read, but it asks you to, like, okay, if I were to call your three managers, like, what would they say? What would
Yeah,
they tell me? Just watching a person's reaction and their body language and how they respond to that is huge. Like, you're telling me AI is going to do that? Like, no, they're not. So whether you call it like fact checking, bullshitting, intuition, a vibe, a read, body language, all of those things, that's all going to be human and stay human.
totally agreed. Totally agreed. There was a guy I spoke to who's a graphic designer, and he said that a lot of what he does even now is trying to get somebody to stop talking about the company the way they rehearsed. When he wants to figure out how to rebrand, he tries to ask them a lot of questions to get into the shadow work. Like he says, like, what are the things you don't want to tell me about your company? Let's
Yeah.
start there so I can understand who you really are. And that's the
Mhm.
big problem I find with AI is it'll mirror back to you whatever you feed it, right? But sometimes you can't see yourself. Like you can't, as you well know, you can't see the role you truly need to hire for or whatever.
Mhm. Nope, I absolutely agree on that. I think that, and on the point of graphic designers, I know a lot of people just, they're saying like we're being replaced or whatever. You're not being replaced. I think that you can be an expert now, where if you're
Yeah.
on board and you're collaborative with AI and say like, yeah, that's great. Let's run all of it through Gamma. Let's run all of this through Canva on AI, and then I'll come in and I'll revise and tweak and make it faster and better. And I will give my expertise and direction on it. They're like, oh, okay, great. Because can you give direction and expertise on graphic design? No.
Yeah.
Should you be prompting the AI? No, you're not a graphic designer. So you still need that person. They're still very much needed. It's just a different perspective.
Yeah, totally. They need to know what good looks like for real and have an expert opinion on that. And if it's not good, how do you fix it? That's another big one with AI. What are you going to prompt then? What you know it's bad. What now if you're not an expert, right? Like how do you
Yeah,
know what to prompt it to fix it?
that's great that it did your slide deck, but then you're still changing it and tweaking it at 2 o'clock in the morning, which you shouldn't be doing because now it costs you another 6 hours because you let your graphic designer go because you wanted to be cheap, right? With AI thinking that it'll spit out your slide deck.
Yeah, and that it'll look like anything decent. And you're just going to get
Mhm.
and then you're not going to get the and then you're not going to win the client because your slide deck looks like crap. So now you've lost business. You know, like it's a
Yeah,
domino effect, right? It's
yeah.
a domino effect. Well, Katie, I thank you very much for coming on this. We're already over time. That hour flew by as I
Yeah.
knew it would. Where can people reach out to you if they need your services or want to learn more?
Yeah, our website is www.yourfrx.com. So it stands for Your Fractional Executive. So yourfrx.com. And then also, I'd love it if people could connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know specifically what you're looking for. We have a free community, biweekly community call where, myself and the coaches just get on and we teach operations and we do some live Q&A, or we have expert panelists come on. And so that is on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern. And they can connect with us on LinkedIn. Or if you think like, hey, this is something that I need and I want to get started, the team's available for discovery calls and you can schedule that on our website. They're complimentary.
Awesome. That's a lot of great stuff. So definitely get with Katie on LinkedIn. You guys can actually click directly on this event if you're watching this on LinkedIn and catch her there. Thank you very much, Katie, for joining us. Hope to see you guys all